Now that Mark Pope has put together an extremely deep and talented roster for this upcoming season, the national media start to take notice.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be taking a look at On3's latest preseason top 25 poll. Cats are surging. The national media is starting to take notice of what Mark Pope is building in Lexington. Going to talk about what this means for UK, kind of my thoughts about where Kentucky stands heading into this offseason now that the roster is essentially done. Also, on today's episode, going to be explaining to you why Kentucky's new roster is going to be better offensively, despite maybe losing some efficiency. I think the volume that Kentucky is going to create for themselves will allow them to score more and just overall be a more complete team. And to wrap up the show, I talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I want to kind of dive back into it today because I've got some numbers here that reflect my opinion. Kentucky's trying to be Florida, and I'll explain how later on in the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when their first $5 bet wins. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So On3, Jamie Shaw put out earlier this afternoon, a way too early college basketball top 25 for the upcoming 2025-2026 season, post-transfer portal, pre-NBA draft combine edition. Now, obviously, things are going to change for a variety of these teams at the top of the rankings, especially Kentucky, who is waiting on their leading scorer, Dawe, to either declare officially for the NBA draft and stay in it, I should say, or announce that he's returning to Lexington for one final season. There's going to be some more moving and shaking here for some top prospects. You look at a guy like maybe Tahad Pettiford. You look at a guy like Yaxel Lindenberg, somebody that Kentucky went after that's now committed to Michigan. Do these guys return, or do they stay in the NBA draft? I think the interesting thing about Kentucky with Mark Pope is that they were able to command the respect and attention, I think, of the national media that over the course of the last offseason kind of lost that with the Cats. When John Calipari left for Arkansas, it did feel like, despite the fan base here in Lexington still loving this team and still really understanding and appreciating what Kentucky basketball is and giving the attention that it deserves to it, while the fan base here and most fans, I think, generally agree Kentucky is still the best program in college basketball, the national media, who I think some of them that work at various companies had some inroads with maybe some of the people that are no longer in Lexington. So they started to give more attention to the Hogs. And I think understandably so. They were bringing in a really good recruiting class. It was a massive move. A lot of people were giving some more attention in the rankings and the projections and all of that good stuff. And now, after Kentucky went and beat the likes of Duke, Florida, they were able to get huge wins over teams like Gonzaga in the non-conference slate. After Kentucky had a really solid season with a bunch of guys that had to be thrown together at the last minute, people are starting to realize, oh, hold on. Not only is this coach legit, but guys, it's still Kentucky. And now that the roster for next season is complete, and there's some really, really solid names on this list, the national media is giving Kentucky the attention it deserves once again. I've continued to say on this show over the last couple of weeks, I think Kentucky is a preseason top 5 team. If I had to pick, because I'm biased, I would have Kentucky as my preseason number 1 team heading into next season. I think that they are going to be the best team in college basketball to start the year if Dawe comes back. Now, you could have the conversation of whether or not maybe you put Purdue or somebody like St. John's or BYU, who is incredible. We've got some really good teams here at the top of college basketball, at least projected to be. But I think Kentucky needs to be among those elite, if not at the very top. And on 3 in their most recent top 25 has the Purdue Boilermakers at number 1. And their transfer portal class is pretty short, but they brought in 2 really solid players. Oscar Clough, somebody from South Dakota State. Before the transfer portal even opened, this was somebody that we were talking about on the show about just how good he was in a variety of areas. Statistically, he's going to be a great center for the Boilermakers. And then North Florida power forward Liam Murphy to go along with, well, a lot of different returners. And that's why Purdue is the preseason number 1 here. Braden Smith's going to be back. Trey Kaufman-Wren, Fletcher Lawyer, CJ Cox, Raleigh Burgess. You've got so many different guys here coming back that have made huge impacts here on this Boilermakers program. There's a reason they're the preseason number 1. Cool. St. John's here is number 2. I would have BYU as my number 2, just personally. And again, it's not a bias thing towards Mark Pope's previous school. I just think BYU is going to be that good this upcoming season. I think they're the best team in the Big 12. Yes, I think they're going to end up being better than Houston. But St. John's here with Zuby Ejiofor. You've got somebody like Ian Jackson coming in, Dylan Mitchell, Bryce Hopkins, Isaiah Sellers. So many different high-profile transfer portal prospects that are coming in there and are going to make a huge impact, specifically in that backcourt there. Bryce Hopkins, former Kentucky player, obviously transferred in from Providence. I understand why St. John's is a top 5 team. I think they should be. A team here that's the preseason number 3 that I just straight up disagree with is UConn. Alex Caravan's back, Terrace Reed's back, Solo Ball's back. Silas Demery is in. Malachi Smith, guard from Dayton, is in. Braylon Mullins is in. Eric Ryby is in. A couple different guys that we've talked about a lot here on the show over the last year and a half just because of what Kentucky's been doing on the recruiting trail. This team does not move me as a top 5 preseason team, especially seeing what some of these returners did last year. They were an 8 seed. They were okay at best relative to college basketball's cream of the crop. Yes, Dan Hurley is a good coach. I wouldn't say he's the best coach in the sport like he thinks, but a preseason top 3, I think is very high for me. Houston at number 4, Emmanuel Sharp, JoJo Tugler, Mercy Miller. You got a lot of guys coming back, as well as Pop Isaacs and Khalifa Sacco or Soko. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, from Sam Houston State. Very solid center. He was somebody, actually, when I was talking about Lamar Wilkerson, like, that guy punches everything home. He should be going somewhere special, and he is. He's going to the Cougars. But Pop Isaacs is a great guard from Creighton. You've also got a lot of recruits coming in. Chris Senack is incredible. Kingston Flemings is a great point guard. Isaiah Harwell is a really solid shooting guard. Look, Houston's not going anywhere. Absolutely not. I think they're deserving of their number 4 ranking. I'd probably have them at 3, honestly. Maybe 4, depending on how I felt about Purdue, just day to day, to be honest with you. And then and then BYU and Michigan are over Kentucky here. Kentucky at number 7, Cougs at number 5, Wolverines at number 6. I think Kentucky, with this roster, is the best team in the SEC heading into the 2025-2026 season. I think our pals over at Locked On College Basketball would agree with that. I think Andy Patton, we talked with him recently on a live stream about this. I think Kentucky should be favored to win the SEC. I think they should be a top 10 team preseason. I think that they should be a top 5 team preseason. And again, if I'd have my pick, I'd put them at number 1 in my own personal. But on 3, ESPN, whatever other major outlet you're looking at, you're starting to notice Cats are climbing the rankings. And if they get Oweh back, I think that solidifies them here at the very top. Heading into next season, I'm very excited about it. I'm so thrilled, speaking of Purdue, to see Kentucky play them in an exhibition game on October 24th. That is going to be absolute cinema, peak college hoops, to go along with St. John's, obviously. Kentucky's going to play them in the CBS Sports Classic. Got some great games coming up for this team. Look, it's going to be a tough road, but I think Kentucky's going to be able to handle it. Let me know what you think about Kentucky surging in the preseason top 25 polls. My take is that they are deserving of being here. And frankly, I think they should be even higher. Let me know what you think in the comments below. All right, I want to talk to you guys here about some stats stuff, as we love to dive into the numbers here on Locked On Kentucky. I want to tell you why the direction that they're shifting in on offense makes a lot of sense, and I'm very excited because volume, I think, for these Cats is going to be way more important than insane efficiency. Going to dive into that here in just a second. Before we do it, though, I'll tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. We are recording right after Tyrese Halliburton ripped the heart out of the Cavs to send the series to Indianapolis. Cavs now down 0-2. Halliburton overrate that, ladies and gentlemen. But whether it's a game-winning shot like Halliburton's or a breakout player like Aaron Gordon with the Nuggets, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off, and with live games with player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. You can head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Let me know what you think about the Cats heading into this offseason. Reese Potter, the most recent addition to Kentucky, the Miami, Ohio product, Lexington native. Talked about him on the most recent episode of the show. Look, I think he's going to be great as a depth piece and then moving forward for seasons to come. Kentucky's building their roster beautifully, and I think when you look at what they're going to do offensively this year, I think they're going to be even better. We've talked about this, but I want to dedicate some more time to it. Volume is going to be the name of the game for Mark Pope's Cats. He talked about this, Pope did, throughout the course of the preseason. I think he talked about it at SEC Media Days, and he talked about it a ton throughout the course of the season about how they needed to get more opportunities from three. They needed to shoot a lot more. It wasn't necessarily about the efficiency. It's about the more shots you can get up. And for Kentucky's squad last season, I disagreed at the time, and I still do, because last season's team did not do a ton to give themselves extra possessions. They relied solely on their ability to knock down the outside shot, and that's an extremely volatile way to play the game. If you're going to rely on your outside shooting, you're going to have great nights where you shoot insane statistically, and then you're going to have nights where you shoot poor and you lose the game, because that's really all you can do. Kentucky was very good offensively, but they didn't grab offensive rebounds, and as the season went along, they turned the ball over more and more and more. They went from one of the nation's best teams at taking care of the basketball, dropping to 40th by the end of the season. They were 338th on defense in creating turnovers. And yes, they were top 40 in offensive rebound percentage, but that was a huge problem for the first half of the year. And they were also terrible at just getting stops in general at the rim. Kentucky defensively got better, yes, but they didn't do a lot of the favors for themselves, giving themselves more opportunities to shoot. And they didn't do it on offense either. So for last year's team, I thought it really was more about efficiency than it was about volume. And honestly, you could have probably slowed the pace down a little bit to try and find better shot selection. But with this year's team, I think it's different, because based on what we're looking at on paper, Kentucky's going to be able to create those extra possessions, give themselves more opportunity to score. The volume is going to be more important for this year's team than the efficiency, because last year it was all about just, look, try and find the most efficient shot, because you're not really getting stops on the other end, and frankly, you're not doing a whole lot to create yourself extra possessions. This year, I think you're going to be able to do that. Even if your shooting isn't elite, extra possessions can make up for that, because over the course of a game, 8 to 10 extra possessions, whether it be a few more turnovers created, whether it be a few more offensive rebounds, whether it be just some more quicker defensive stops, it can swing the margin of a contest significantly. And Kentucky could have absolutely used that in some tight contests last season. You combine that with just slightly above average shooting, which Kentucky is projected to do this season, I think you're going to find yourself winning a lot of basketball games. Brandon Ramsey of KSR, this was what kind of spurred me to have this conversation, is earlier today, he quote tweeted Wildcats Tongue on Twitter, and this is B Ramsey KSR on Twitter, responding to Wildcats Tongue. Tongue said, if you can shoot 35% as a team on 25 attempts per game, that's good enough to win plenty of SEC games, especially with the insanely upgraded defense. Ramsey said, absolutely. For context, Florida shot 35.6% on 27.4% attempts per game. Alabama was 35.3% on 29.8%. Auburn was 35.9 on 25.2%, and Kentucky was 37.5 on 25.3%. I'd like to increase the volume to that 27.5 to 30 number and let the percentage fall a couple of points. And that's what kind of started this conversation here today for me, is to reiterate some things that I've been saying a lot to you guys, is that extra possessions, more opportunities to score. The best teams in the SEC were able to create more opportunities for themselves, and they were slightly above average three-point shooting teams at best. There was a lot less variance in how they played offensively from night to night, and on top of this, they were all very good defensively. Efficient three-point shooting teams, more volatile. We saw that last season. Shots don't fall, you don't create extra possessions, you're going to lose and you may get blown out. We saw that. I think the perfect example of this is the Ohio State game in I believe, New York last season, where Kentucky lost by 20. They started chucking up shots, losing the ball, and they weren't able to stop Ohio State. Team that creates extra possessions has more built-in margin for error. They can survive cold stretches more easily, and I think that will lead to a lot more success in March. I also think that defensive identity just travels better. I think that's really exemplified in what the SEC's best did this past season. All of them were very, very good defensively, and it traveled on the road almost every single trip, even whenever the best offensive teams weren't playing well. Auburn, Alabama, Florida, they were able to steal wins on the road. You think about Auburn on the road against Georgia. You think somebody like Alabama going on the road against Kentucky, where their defense was able to step up there towards the end of the game. Defensive identity travels better, and you can build an efficient offense from possessions. You win the possession battle, you can survive with just good enough shooting. If you're relying on elite shooting and nothing else, at that point, you're essentially relying on a coin flip, which, again, that's more of what last year's team was like for the majority of the year. I think it's going to be different this season. And there's, again, the one specific team I continue to talk about is Florida. Kentucky's trying to be Florida, and we'll talk a little bit more about the stats that Ramsey discussed here in just a second. Before we do that, though, I'll tell you guys about our friends over at Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. You can visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. All right, wrapping up the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe chilling here with you, talking about Kentucky hoops. We gave the reasons why extra possessions mean more winning. On paper, Kentucky's roster is going to create more possessions. Jaden Quaintance is going to get more stops at the rim. He's going to create more blocks. He's going to alter more shots. He's going to grab more rebounds. Players like Mo Diabate are going to do the same on the offensive end. Cam Williams is going to dramatically help Kentucky improve defensively, give them athleticism, give them speed at that wing spot, 100%. Guys like Yelovich, going to provide height and physicality. Same with Brandon Garrison, Malachi Marino, Reese Potter, if you're going to dig that deep into the bench. You got height, you got aggression, you got athleticism. You got somebody like Jalen Lowe, who is an extremely shifty, quick, speed-oriented point guard who will shoot better and is a great distributor. Kentucky is better this year. They will be better at giving themselves more opportunities to score. Florida did this very well last season. Florida was the second best team in the nation, according to Kim Palm on offense. Second best offensive efficiency, adjusted offensive efficiency. They had the sixth best adjusted defensive efficiency. They were good at taking the offensive rebounds away from their opponent. They had the fifth best 3-point defense in the nation, 19th best 2-point defense in the nation. Were higher on turnover percentage than Kentucky was. Just overall, did a really good job of taking the ball away from their opponent in various ways, not giving the opponent extra chances. Whereas on the offensive side of the ball, they were only 82nd. I say only 82nd nationally. It's still top third in the country in three-point shooting at 35.6%. But they were fifth in offensive rebounding. They were really good at preventing turnovers as well. They were a good enough shooting team, top 30 interior, by the way, top 30 two-point offense. They were good enough shooting, great rebounding the ball, good enough preventing turnovers, good enough creating turnovers, and good enough playing defense overall. They created more opportunities for themselves, and they won games by scoring more. If you want to go look at the SEC last season, top two teams in the SEC in terms of three-point attempts per game, Alabama and Florida, 29.8, 27.4. Kentucky was fifth with 25.6%. And then you also can look at three-pointers made. Alabama and Florida, they're at 10.5 and 9.8. They're at the top, despite being 6th and 7th in three-point percentage. So what did they do to prevent, though, or to create more opportunities? Well, they mainly grabbed offensive rebounds. Florida was second in the conference with 13.7 offensive rebounds per game. Bama was fourth with 12.4. Kentucky was 13th with only 9.9. They also, if I'm not mistaken, were right there with Florida in terms of turnovers per game at 11, and then Florida at 11.1. They did similar things holding on to the basketball. Florida significantly better grabbing second chance opportunities, same with Bama. And you look at Kentucky, while yes, they were really good shooting the ball, it was compensating for their lack of ability to really do anything else very well. And Kentucky was good at certain things last season, don't get me wrong, but it was the shooting that was the kind of ride or die. The thing that I'm looking for here, and the stats are not like blow your socks off insane, like, oh, it's just so much, it's so drastically different with Florida. It's not like that. But what I'm looking for is more consistency, more margin for error, and an improvement athletically. And I think Kentucky is going to do all three of those things this year. I think they're definitely going to do all three of those things this year. And so I think they're going to win more games. More variance control. And it doesn't have to be a significant margin. It can be, again, like I said, 5, 6, 7 more extra possessions a game. You score on 2 of those, it's a 5 to 6, or it's a 4 to 6 point swing in your direction, and that can be huge, especially considering if it comes before the end of like the final 4 minutes of the game. If it's tight, instead of it being tight, you're up by 9 to 12. Instead of having to fight and claw your way, it's like, oh, I'm only up by 3. Oh, I'm only up by 5. As things get tight here, a couple of baskets from the opposing team will tie things up. Whereas instead, a couple of baskets from the other team, you look up and there's a minute and a half left, and they've got to start fouling if they've not already put you at the line a couple of times, because as we all know, the whistle gets tighter as it gets to the end of the game. So that's all I'm looking for. Variance control is the biggest thing here. This is the name of the game for the Cats this upcoming season. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Why or why not? That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. Follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and God bless.